Blake Stiller,
Jacob Bennett,
Casey Dykes,
Madelyn. The great philosopher Plato once said that things aren't always as they seem. The first appearance deceives many.
Everyone in this room has taken multiple history classes throughout high school, but a portion of the population does not believe the historical events and anomalies occurred.
Conspiracy theories captivate the attention of many people and continue to change throughout history.
First, we are going to talk about the Mandela effect. Second, we are going to talk about the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And third, we are going to talk about NFL conspiracies.
Fourth, we'll be covering the first moon landing. And finally, we're going to be covering UFOs. First, let's begin by talking about how the conspiracy death of Nelson Mandela led to the Mandela effect. Nelson Mandela was a nonviolent activist, politician, and philanthropist who became South Africa's first black president in 1994 to 1995. According to Colin Bundy, a South African historian and former head of Green Templeton College, who has over 50 publications in the book Nelson Mandela, Activist, published in 2016, states that Nelson Mandela was arrested and imprisoned in 1962 following the Ravona trials. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, even though he was sentenced to life imprisonment. F.W. de Klerk, the former president of South Africa, from 1990 to 1992. Nelson Mandela later succeeded F.W. de Klerk and lived for almost 3 more decades. Despite Nelson Mandela's release from prison and new presidency, many people believe he had died back in prison in the 1980s. Nelson Mandela's death in 2013 was the initial event to spark the conspiracy. Many people recall TV footage and news clippings of Nelson's funeral in the 1980s, but none of that's true because Nelson Mandela indeed died in 2013. Nelson Mandela's death was only the beginning. Since then, there's been multiple instances of the Mandela effect in today's society. The Mandela effect is a phenomenon where many people believe the same event that's false in different orders. People have tried to debunk this phenomenon by saying that the Mandela effect is a simple case of misremembering events or facts. According to J.P. Moss, a researcher of the Mandela effect since 1985 and an author of 12 different publications in the book Mandela Effect, published in 2018, states that a false memory is a psychological phenomenon where people believe in something that did not happen or something that's not true. However, other people believe conspiracies as wild as parallel universes that merge with different dimensions. There are multiple examples of the Mandela event in today's society today. A common misconception of a family board game lies with the Monopoly Man's appearance. A monocle is often seen by the common eye, but the Monopoly Man was never drawn with a monocle. Another example is in the classic movie of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. When the evil queen is asking the mirror who is the fairest of them all, she does not say the words, "Mirror, mirror on the wall." In fact, she says the words, "Magic mirror on the wall." Another example lies with a tasty snack that is shared across the country, Oreos. The packaging is often misread, and people read that it is called double stuffed Oreos, but in fact, they are called double stuffed Oreos. The company was trying to relay that you get double the stuff in every Oreo. All these examples of the Mandela effect trick us every day. But the Mandela effect will continue to spread by the hundreds of thousands of people who believe in these false memories, who will later share these false memories to future generations yet to come. Now that we have learned about the Nelson Mandela effect, we will learn about the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001.
There are many conspiracies that have formed about the 9/11 terrorist attacks. On September 11, 2001, 4 planes carried out terroristic and suicidal missions on U.S. soil. 2 of those planes were crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Within 1 hour and 42 minutes, both 110-story buildings completely collapsed on each other. A 3rd plane was flown into the Pentagon, and a 4th plane was crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. These attacks were orchestrated by the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. Overall, this is the single deadliest day of a terrorist attack in all of human history. It is also the deadliest incident for firefighters and law enforcement in the United States history. Because this was such a big event in our history, there have been many conspiracies that have formed around it. One conspiracy is that the government was actually the ones who planned this event. The biggest reason for this was because the Bush administration was looking for a reason to go to war in Afghanistan and Iraq. The reason for that was to fight the terrorist organization, Al-Qaeda. This is according to Alexander Mons, a professor of political science at the Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, published in the book, The Foreign Policy of George W. Bush, in 2015. A lot of people believe that it would have been much faster for them to plan this event themselves, rather than waiting for something bad enough to grant a war to happen. This has become very popular throughout pop culture. The phrase "Bush did 9/11" is often used throughout different types of social media in our society. Another conspiracy that is formed about the government is that the government knew about the attacks prior to the event and didn't do anything to stop them. While this technically makes them not responsible, it also gives them a good enough reason to go into the war. A large reason that this is believed is because of the previous event that happened, which was Pearl Harbor. The government knew about the Pearl Harbor attack, but they were looking for a reason to go to war in World War II. Another conspiracy is about the collapsing of the towers. According to Dave Thomas, a professor of physics and psychology at the New Mexico Technical College, published in the Journal of Scientific Investigation of the Claims of the Unknown in 2011, a lot of people believe that the burning of the jet fuel would not have been enough to melt the steel beams in the two towers. A lot of people use the reasoning that this is an assumed knowledge, despite the fact that multiple people have disclaimed those facts already. Such as 2 + 2 = 4, and how when you say 4, it is an automatic instinct in your brain to say. People think that when you are asked the question, does the jet fuel burn the steel beams, your assumed answer is no. People use the logic that the towers should have tipped over instead of completely collapsing on each other like in the picture. Now that we have discussed the 9/11 terrorist attacks, we are going to discuss the NFL football conspiracies.
The National Football League has many conspiracies revolving around it, many of which have occurred in the past decade. According to Clay Clayton, who earned a Juris Doctorate from Georgetown University Law Center in the journal Legal Ethics, published in May 2014, states that in Super Bowl 47, which occurred in 2013, the power went out early in the third quarter of the game. The Super Bowl matchup was between the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers. The game was turning out to be one of the biggest blowouts in Super Bowl history. The Baltimore Ravens had mounted a 28-6 lead and had showed no signs of slowing down. All momentum was on their side until the power went out and causing all the lights to go out in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, which is located in New Orleans, Louisiana. The power outage lasted for 34 minutes, which was enough time for the 49ers to recoup and develop a new game plan. The 49ers scored 17 unanswered points after the power outage and looked assured that they were going to complete one of the greatest comebacks in Super Bowl history. Unfortunately, with less than 2 minutes left in the game, the 49ers were unable to score the necessary touchdown to win the game. The Baltimore Ravens won Super Bowl 47, but there is plenty of speculation revolving around NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Many believe that Roger Goodell was the reason for the power outage. It is believed that Goodell had to do something about the blowout and ordered someone to purposely cause all the lights to go out. 2 years after Super Bowl 47, conspiracy theories in the National Football League altered over to the Deflategate scandal. Claimed by John Kerry, who was a professor of government at Dartmouth College, in the journal Research and Politics, published in August 2016, states that Deflategate was a controversy that occurred after the 2015 AFC Championship game between the New England Patriots and the Indianapolis Colts. The game was by no means close in score, as the Patriots had defeated the Colts 45-7. But during the game, Colts linebacker DePaul Jackson intercepted a pass and had noticed the underinflated football. Jackson wasn't the only one to notice it, as one of the Colts team equipment managers had noticed the issue as well. New England quarterback Tom Brady was believed to be the reason for the underinflated footballs. Brady supposedly ordered a team equipment manager to deflate the footballs to 2 pounds per square inch below the standard amount. Throwing and catching a deflated football is much easier to do, which is why it was believed that the blowout was beyond more than just a better team winning. 3 years later, another conspiracy theory involved the New England Patriots. One of the most recent conspiracy theories in the National Football League occurred in the 2018 AFC Championship. The game was between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New England Patriots. The Jaguars had the lead the entire game until the 4th quarter, when Tom Brady had led the Patriots to an impressive comeback to win the game. But many believe that the game was plotted and that the Patriots had help from the officials. There is many inconsistencies in the penalties between the two teams. The Patriots had seen as they were getting all the calls to go their way. Also, officials had been seen showing signs of support for the Patriots at times and revolting against the Jaguars. Since we have covered NFL conspiracies, next we will talk about NASA and the fake moon landing.
Many people believe that the moon landings were fake. The original moon landing occurred in 1969 during the Apollo 11 mission. Astronauts from the United States landed and walked on the moon's surface. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins became national heroes. But conspiracy theorists claim that we were not yet capable of landing on the moon. According to William Bryan, an author, engineer, and early conspiracy theorist, in the book Moongate, Suppressed Findings of the U.S. Space Program, published in 1982, there are holes in the calculations that NASA claimed to use. With the supposed gravity of the moon and velocity of the spacecraft, he claims the spacecraft should have crashed into the moon's surface. Even if the spacecraft could have made the flight, astronauts on board should have perished due to radiation poisoning when they passed through the Van Allen radiation belts that surround the Earth. Conspiracy theorists are also quick to point out that the U.S. had motivation to fake the moon landings. Observed by David Robert Grimes, a physicist and science writer, in the journal PLOS-1, published on January 26, 2016. Conspiracy theorists believe that the moon landings were faked or mocked up for propaganda purposes. At the time of the moon landings, the U.S. was in the midst of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. Part of this war was the space race. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy gave a speech at Rice University that proclaimed that the U.S. would put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. By doing this, the U.S. would win the space race and increase morale for the Cold War. The problem with this is conspiracy theorists don't believe that we were capable of doing that. So, in order to meet the deadline, NASA was forced to fake the moon landings. In the cover-up, it had so much haste that conspiracy theorists believe we showed errors. There appears to be visual evidence of this happening. Some pictures appear to be from movie sets. In one particular photo, there appears to be an astronaut, or a person, reflecting off the astronaut's glass on their helmet that's in plain clothes. This would indicate that it was filmed on a movie set because a person in plain clothes on the moon would be dead. In another photo, there appears to be a moon rock with the letter C on it. That letter could be from a prop because in Hollywood, props are often marked with letters for ease and efficiency when setting up and taking down sets. NASA has repeatedly denied claims that the U.S. faked the moon landings. A host of scientists, researchers, and NASA have comprehensively and completely debunked moon landing theories. However, conspiracy theorists still cling to the notion that the U.S. faked the moon landings. Now that we have covered the moon landings, let's move deeper into space and talk about UFOs.
The conspiracy theories of UFOs all started with the very first sighting. An unidentified flying object is an object that remains unidentifiable even after a scientific analysis. The term unidentified flying object, or UFO, comes to mean that it is something that is both something that is truly unidentifiable, and that it is thought to be extraterrestrial. The well-known very first sighting of a UFO occurred in 1947 with businessman Kenneth Arnold claimed to see 9 high-speed flying objects near Mount Rainier in Washington while he was flying his small plane. Arnold estimated that the crescent-shaped objects were going several thousand miles per hour, and he said that they moved like saucers skipping on water. The newspaper report mistakenly said that the crescent-shaped objects were saucer-shaped, hence the term flying saucer. Seth Shatak, a senior astronomer for SETI in UFO, the Flying Saucer, published in July of 2018, said that the U.S. Air Force began an investigation and increased the amount of UFO sightings. From 1952 to 1969, Project Blue Book became a compile of reports of sightings of over 12,000 sightings and or events. Abductions are just as big as UFOs. Elizabeth Howell, who became a senior writer at the University of Today for 35 years, and in the article, Are We Alone?, published on December 2017, said that the most psychologists who experience these investigations said that the most common experiment is that everyone has sleep paralysis. For the people who have sleep paralysis, they said that the sleepers are immobility and that they have a belief that they have someone watching them. Aliens are in many TV shows and movies today. For example, Star Wars, many characters have to talk with many aliens from different planets. Scientists can conclude about 90% of the sightings say that they can be mistaken for planets, stars, aircraft carriers, or even birds and balloons. But the secrecy helped fuel the suspicion of government cover-ups of UFOs. First, we talked about the Mandela effect and the terrorist attacks of 9/11.
Next, we discussed NFL conspiracies and NASA's moon landing.
Finally, we elaborated on UFOs.
Conspiracy theories captivate the attention of millions and continue to change throughout history.
As we talked about various conspiracy theories, it became clear that everything is not as it seems.